If you're not using aniline dye to dye stain the wood that you're using in the guitar that you're building, you really should. I'm Chris at Highline Guitars. I'm going to try to explain in this video why aniline dye works so well when it comes to putting color on the wood of the guitar that you're building. Now, over the years, I've used a lot of different products to dye or stain wood. I've used water-based wood stains, oil-based wood stains. I've even made my own oil-based wood stains by using artist oil paints, which I then thinned with mineral spirits and boiled linseed oil. I've used clothing dye, like RIT clothing dye, and these products work okay, but I found that they didn't give me the intensity of color that I wanted for my guitars. Then I came across a product from a company called Keta Dyes, and they sell aniline dye, and they sell it in both powdered form as well as liquid form. Now, at the time, I only had access to the powdered form, so I purchased some of it. And I found that this stuff worked incredibly well. You simply mix the powder into water and then apply it to the wood, and the result was a very strong, robust, intense color. Far better than anything else that I've used before. And I found this was really especially beneficial when applying a dye stain to woods like maple. Maple can be a real challenge to apply a color to. It can go down really inconsistently, and it sometimes doesn't look the way you would hope that it would. It doesn't have that intensity that you want and that you've seen other guitar builders accomplish with their projects. Well, with the Keta dyes, it worked fantastic, and that's what I've been using ever since when I want to apply color to the wood of the guitars that I'm building. However, I've slightly changed up the method that I use it. Now, in this video, I'm not going to mix up the product and show you how I use it. I simply want to explain the benefits of using an aniline dye. I plan, however, to, in my next video, show you how I mix it up and how I apply it to the guitars that I'm building over here, the hollow body as well as the solid body. And as you can see, those are flame maple tops. And getting a really good, strong, intense, robust color effect on that type of wood can be a little bit of a challenge. But I think you'll see when I use these aniline dyes, they do an amazing job. Now, the reason why aniline dyes work so well is because in their powdered form, the pigment is ground extremely fine. The particles are incredibly tiny, much smaller than particles found in other types of dye stains. As a result, they do a better job of soaking into the wood and staining it the color that you want. Now, when I buy the Keta dyes, I'm buying the powdered form. I don't really use the liquid form because I've always had great luck with the powdered form. And I buy their 5-color sample pack. And that includes your 3 primary colors: blue, yellow, red, and then they throw in black and brown. From these colors, you can mix just about any color you could ever possibly want. So you can mix your red and your blue to get purple, your yellow and your blue to get green, to get green, then the yellow and the red together to get orange, and you can get all different hues and tints depending on how you mix the colors together. Now, Keta Dyes recommends that you mix their colors into water. That's what they say performs the best. In truth, what it does is it mixes up faster when you mix it into water. You can mix the color in, the pigment into it, and once you have the concentration what you want, you should always be testing on scrap, you're good to go. However, there's one disadvantage with using water. When you apply a water-based dye or stain to wood, it causes the grain to raise. When you sanded the wood, you've broken apart the grain or the fiber structure of the wood on the surface. So it's all cut and split. And when you apply water to it, as that water evaporates out of it, those fibers curl up. Those broken, cut, and torn fibers will curl up and dry that way. So once the dye stain has dried, if you run your fingers over the surface, it feels really rough. And that can be a really challenge to deal with when you start to apply your clear coats. Ideally, you want to sand away that raised grain but then you're sanding away color as well. And now one way to avoid this is to pre-raise the grain, meaning you wipe down the surface of the wood with a damp cloth, let it dry, and then lightly sand with the finest grit you can get to remove that raised grain. Then when you apply your water-based dye stain, you're still going to get some grain raising up, but it's not going to be as significant. So what I do instead is I mix my dye stain into, or the dye pigments into alcohol. And by doing that, there's not water present and it won't cause the grain to raise as it dries. Now the disadvantage is when you mix this pigment into alcohol, it takes longer for it to thoroughly blend into that alcohol base. So typically what I do is I mix it in and then let it sit for about an hour. And that's long enough for that pigment to be fully absorbed into the alcohol, at which point it seems to function and perform just as well as the water-based version of it. So I prefer using the alcohol to avoid that issue of raised grain. Now I'm going to put a link to all the products that I use to make this dye stain, and like I said, in a future video I'm going to show you how I mix it up and apply it, so be sure to check that out. But if you do a Google search for aniline dye powder, you'll find that there's a lot of different companies out there that are making it. I can only vouch for Keta dyes because that's the only product that I've used, and they've been around for quite a while. And the cool thing is this kit right now, I think it runs like 20 bucks. It's not that expensive. So I'll put a link, like I said, in the description below so that you can go check out the product. And I would highly recommend that you consider mixing it into alcohol rather than water, although you can test both ways and see which method works best for you. But I think you'll find that this color, this method of coloring the wood is so much more effective. And even though you get these little packets of powder, a tiny bit of this stuff goes a long way. One of these little packets will make up a full quart of dye stain, which is way more than you'll use on a guitar. You will barely use any of it when you're staining a guitar, an entire guitar. I'm talking the body, the entire body, the neck, the headstock, everything. And in my opinion, when you use the product, it's best to mix up only what you need for that particular project, rather than mixing up a full quart, because I don't know what the shelf life is. I can't imagine it's really long, but Keta Dyes recommends that you mix up only what you need for a given project. So that's typically what I do, and that's what I'll be showing in the next video, where I start to actually apply the color to these guitars. Okay guys, well I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you got something out of it. I would encourage you to check out my next video when I actually demonstrate making this product and how I apply it to a guitar. I think you'll find it really interesting, and I think you'll be impressed with the results. And when you see the type of color and the intensity of that color on the wood, it's going to convince you that aniline dyes are definitely the best way to put color onto wood. If you did enjoy the video, take just a second to move your cursor over there and click that little thumbs up button. It really helps the channel. And it's a great way to support my channel without having to spend any money. And of course, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can do all the things I mentioned earlier in the video. At any rate, until the next episode, as always, take care, stay safe, and I hope you'll be back for more guitar building videos.